the count of three. Are you over the age of 18? And what in the heck should we call you? Because our eyesight's not as good as it used to be.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear
Yes,
you.
absolutely.
Oh, cool. Yeah, my little tag there is sober-minded.
Ah, I love it. Sober
Sober-minded.
minded. Okay,
Okay.
cool. We followers of the channel will probably know that our screen is a TV that's like a ways away.
So we can't
Yeah.
read the handles very well.
Our studio is
Um,
not a professional studio.
And you did say you're over 18?
yes, I am.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Awesome.
What do you
Cool.
got for us? Where do you want to start?
Yeah, where would you like to start?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is a pretty big topic, yeah. Christians, why do you still believe? Um, I guess I can kind of just go off of like my own experience.
Sure. Wherever
And
you want to start.
then yeah, so I mean, I believe because I mean I was born in a Christian home, so I think that's a big part of it. But then I started to really read the Bible for myself, and not just because my parents wanted me to, or go to church just because my parents wanted me to. When I started to really find that the Bible is true, and God really started to work in my heart. I struggled with a lot of things growing up, and I found that Jesus really did die on the cross for my sins. And I know that's something that not everyone agrees with. Um, but I think the evidence that I find in the Bible, I find it to be very, very true, very honest. There are some things that I maybe can't always understand in the Bible, but I think the tenets of the faith are really compelling. I think the Christian worldview provides a really good way for human flourishing. Um, and I mean, there's a lot of other reasons, but that's just kind of some of the basics.
No, that sounds really good. So you mentioned like some personal experiences. You mentioned the Bible, tenets of the faith.
Also mentioned being born in the religion, which I think is valid, and I also think that's really important to
Right. We
acknowledge.
were both Christian.
Hmm. Yeah.
She was raised Catholic, I was raised
Hmm.
Protestant. Um I remember it's funny because we just had a Hindu caller just on, as you probably heard. I
Yeah.
literally remember asking my grandma when I was 8. I remember saying like, if we grew up in a country that was Hindu, would we be Hindu? Like I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't get a good answer. No,
Yeah.
no offense to my grandma.
Is there any way to turn their volume up?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm gonna turn your volume up a little bit here. But
Sure.
okay, so on a scale, like what would you say those things like rank for you? Is it like the Bible seems the most real, or your personal experiences seem the most real? What and if I'm forgetting one of those, like let me know. But what would you say like tips the scales for you in terms of Christianity versus like Hindu, like the last caller?
Yeah. I say number one, I would say the evidence that the Bible provides, like the prophetic parts, like you read, like
Mm.
Isaiah 53, um, just how it predicts that there will be a son of suffering, a suffering servant who's Jesus. I think that's a pretty big um, example of why I believe it's true, because how can that be like, predicted? I would put the Bible as a big part, and then I would also say um, how I see God moving in my life and the life of other people as another big part as well.
So so like let's say one of those uh spokes got pulled out, right? So you've got like two things that like are your like pillars. Like you've got like two major pillars for the door, right? You've got like how things are like in my life and what I see in other people's lives, biblical truth in terms of like Jesus prophecies. Like is one of those stronger than the other? And if either one were to get ripped out, would it in any way crumble your faith by chance?
Um, if any of one of them were to be ripped out.
Right. So if like for some reason I were to all of a like not me, but like if for some reason like your friend was like, I believe in God and God's gonna get me through this, and they get through it, and then all of a sudden they're like, actually secretly I was believing in Vishnu and technically they
mm,
got me through it. Or and then at
yeah.
the same time you had two other friends that were like, actually I believed I was gonna do this and technically I believed in, Allah and they got me
Hmm.
through this. Would that shatter your faith on one side versus like all of a sudden like actually Isaiah 53 is not a prophecy of Jesus? Would that hurt you? Or do neither of these pillars even matter and would you just still believe in Jesus even if both of them got ripped out?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I
I
think
agree.
personally, I would believe in Jesus even if both of those things got ripped out. I think the only thing that will probably concern me is if there's any question about the validity and the accuracy of the Bible.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
So you think the Bible's inerrant?
Inerrant meaning like, without
Like
flaws.
completely accurate, like it's God breathed, it's
Yeah. Yeah, I do believe it. I do believe the Bible is from the Word of God. Yeah.
so do you think that like God spoke through people at all periods of time and they wrote exactly what God told them to write and therefore like no matter at what time or another like God was talking to them essentially when they
Mm.
were writing it, or do you believe that like people were like I think God kind of wrote that, or I think this is what God means so they kind of wrote what God means? Like what's your level of like, because some people like I'm friends with Methodists, and no offense if you're Methodist, but they're kind of like, man, the Old Testament was like, God kind of meant this, so I kind of
but
wrote
not
this down,
really.
but it was just a metaphor.
Mm.
Like, what's your thoughts
Yeah.
about like the level of how God breathed is it? Like when God said he created the earth in 7 days, did he create the earth in
Yeah.
7 days? Or let's go ahead and jump to Peter where it says a day to God is like a
A
thousand
thousand years.
years, and really he made it in 7,000 years.
Yeah, I think the Bible is so interesting and can be so complex. I think that I do believe the Bible is inspired, but I also don't think that God takes away the human element of it. And so what I mean by that is, when I look at, for example, Matthew, right? We see
Right.
that Matthew is a tax collector, and he's very uh, like his gospel is really written from a Jewish perspective because if you look at chapter one, he's, you know, kind of showing the lineage of Jesus. He points out a lot of things during Jesus's ministry that Jews would kind of be like, oh wow, that's connected to David or that's connected to Abraham and Moses. So I say that to say yes, it's divinely inspired, but I do believe that God allows the people who wrote it to still express who they are. And you can kind of tell from the way they write it. Even Luke being a physician, the way he's very detailed. Paul in his letters, just the style of the person is still seen through the scripture, but it is also divinely inspired as well.
All right, I'm gonna call on Adele here
Oh,
because her college major was English literature.
Nice.
So here's the thing. So I like what you're saying there because you're basically saying like God spoke through the people, but each person got their own like what do you call it, like voice? Is that what that is? So like each author, he's saying like Matthew like was clearly like a tax collector writing to
okay.
Jews, but would you call it that like God like was speaking through
Are you
them? They
asking me my view as a former Catholic?
no, as a English lit major.
Oh,
I It's actually a simple question.
I mean,
The simple answer, I think, is like, yeah, they got their own voice, essentially.
the simple answer is the Gospels do have different voices, but they're not necessarily the voices that you would maybe actually tie back to the people that we know who Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were.
Right. Okay. So,
So what do you
but
mean by
what you're
that? Do you think they're like not being honest in their writing, or like they're not the same people?
I think that they're attributed to people and they maybe weren't written by those people.
Weren't written by them. Okay, that's an interesting take.
so if okay, so can we look at a few things, because I think at this point, okay, so the Bible is spoken by God, which I believed, by the way. I totally believed that. I believed that the Bible was God's book. And according to Timothy, it is God breathed, inerrant, and available for what is it, rebuke and teaching.
Yeah.
Right. So let's look at first a couple things that challenged me, that I struggled with, and perhaps you can help me understand, because like I struggled with a few things.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find one that I struggled. I'm pulling up Bible Gateway here. Maybe I'm pulling up Bible Gateway. Okay. Actually, here's one that we asked another caller the other day. I will say what happened with the color, because it was kind of a weird. And it is one of my favorite. And it is my favorite color. I'm going to say my favorite color is David.
David the Third. David Jr.
David Jr. David the Third. If you're still out there, if you're still watching,
we're still here.
You're our favorite. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can share my screen here real quick. Sharing screen.
Oh, because of his translation.
Yeah, this was weird to me. I didn't expect this. Okay, so it says in 2 Samuel 24:13. Okay, it says so Gad came to David and told him, he asked him, shall 7 years of famine come to you on your land, or will you flee for 3 months before your foes while they pursue you? Or shall 3 days pestilence in your land? So there's basically a consequence here because of a sin committed, and we can go back into the context, but I've got other examples. But basically, is there going to be 7 years of famine, 3 months of foes pursuing, or 3 days of pestilence in your land? And this was the proposition offered to David for penance of the sin.
Right, for his punishment.
Right. This is 2 Samuel 24:13. And as you know, because the Old Testament has several like repetitive accounts, just like the New Testament. Like the New Testament has repetitive accounts of the Gospels, right? We have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. In the Old Testament, we have Samuel, Kings, and then we have Chronicles. So then, if we go to Chronicles, it says it's either 3 years of famine, 3 months of devastation, or 3 days of the sword. So
of pestilence.
Of pestilence, yeah. So the question I have is like, why in Samuel is it like 7 years of famine, and in Chronicles it's 3 years of famine? If they were both told by God, I mean, 3 and 7 are pretty easily. I don't think that they're like scribal mistakes. Maybe they're a scribal mistake. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about that. I think that I know Chronicles is a bit of a different take on the same events that happens in like Samuel and so I don't know if it's focusing on like a different part, but I'd have to kind of look into that.
Can I show you another one, and then can I give you my thoughts on why Samuel and Kings are usually different than Chronicles?
Sure.
Okay, let me try to find another Samuel, Kings, Chronicles. I'm going to try to find an easy one because I hate to say this.
I'm going to do my potty break while you find this.
There's a lot. So honestly, if you just Google like Samuel, Kings versus Chronicles contradictions, you're going to
Mhm.
find a lot. But I'm going to explain why I think that scholars believe that there's a lot of contradictions, and then we're going to move past this because we're not going to dwell in this because this is like splitting hairs.
Sure.
Okay, so let's take a look at this one. Pull this one out here. Trying to make it right for the screen. Share the screen. Whoops. Okay, share screen. I'm gonna get faster at this, I promise. Here we go. Share. Did I not add that last one to the stage? If I didn't, I apologize. Okay. Okay, so this is 1 Kings. It says, these were the chief officers who were over Solomon's work, 550 who had charge of the people who carried on the work. Okay, and write these down. And users, sorry, my line of work deals with users. Follower, viewers, write this down. This is 1 Kings 9:23. Compare the context. Don't just read the verse, read all of 1 Kings 9 to understand this is the same exact story. Because as SoberMinded knows, like we have the Samuel and King's stories being recounted in Chronicles. Now, in Chronicles, according to the theory that God said the same thing, and quite frankly, they had texts that they could reference back to, it says, these were the chief officers of King Solomon, 250 of them, who exercised authority over the people. So it's the exact same story. Chronicles had the text. They could have just looked back and copied it. But instead of the, what was it, 550, they said 250. So why do you think that the Chronicles changed it if God is saying the same thing?
Yeah. Honestly, I don't have an answer other than there's got to be way smarter than me that knows why.
So do continue down that thought process. Okay, just continue down that thought process and definitely continue to study. Okay, I that's the best thing anyone can do, and
Yeah.
your honesty is
There's no
fantastic
right
because
conclusion.
you might be right. You might be right. Someone may have the answer that explains it, or maybe not. But here's why I believe, and I hate to use the word believe, here's why scholars feel that there's a difference between Samuel, Kings, and Chronicles. So you're familiar that like there was the nation of Israel, that was united under David and Solomon about 1000 BC, and you had the northern 10 tribes that eventually split off from the southern 2 tribes. And stop me, and people in the chat stop me if I'm talking. I'm a former Sunday school teacher, so I assume I assume everyone's been to my Sunday school class, but if not, stop me. Are you familiar with like the northern 10 tribes split and the 2 tribes split?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So the northern 10 tribes split and the southern 2 tribes split, and then we had like kings in the north, kings in the south, and the north was constantly battling the kingdoms of the north, like Aram of Damascus and Assyria, and the tribes in the south were by and large left alone. They basically had Egypt to their south, but they were kind of a backwater country, like with Jerusalem of maybe 40,000 people. They didn't really have much to worry about. What happened was, all of a sudden, in about 722 BC, roughly, the Assyrians just freaking wiped out the northern 10 tribes of Israel. They came in, they decimated them, and they spread them throughout all of Assyria. And there were a lot of refugees that ran down into the southern 2 tribes of Judah. And because the northern 10 tribes of Israel were like literate and wealthy, because that was like the olive country and the places that had the agriculture, They brought down a lot of wealth and knowledge and education to Judah. And all of a sudden, King Josiah had hundreds of thousands of refugees coming down, and a Jerusalem city of 40,000 went to 250,000. And now all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're relevant. And we have scribes, we can start writing stuff down. At that time in 722 BC, we discover Deuteronomy. Any Christians on the line who's read how you just like were renovating the temple and all of a sudden, whoops, here's Deuteronomy. It pops out. But what happens is at that point, we start writing Samuel and Kings. So that's called the Deuteronomical history. So you have Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, First and Second Samuel, which at that time was just called Samuel, and Kings, right? First and Second Kings. So you've got like this like Deuteronomical history. Then what happened was eventually in 586 BC, Judah gets taken over by Babylon, and they get exiled into Babylon. Now, while they're in Babylon, they have to re-identify themselves. They no longer have a country. Josiah was creating a movement, right? He's like, we've got a kingdom, we've got to unite. Everything written in Samuel and Kings is all about like our kingdom, our people. We're going to stand up, we're going to maintain, and we're going to have this land. In the Babylonian exile, all of a sudden it was like, we have to identify ourselves as a people culturally and ethnicity, not like as a land. And so that's when we get Chronicles and the priestly source. When they go back by, Darius and Cyrus saying you can go back into your land and create your temple, but they were still under Babylonian rule. That's when Chronicles comes. So you've got a lot of contradictions between Chronicles written by the priests versus Samuel and Kings written by this like conquest land oriented mentality, if that makes sense. But what are your thoughts on that? And if it's just a hey, let's do some research, that's cool too.
Yeah, I think I definitely need to do more research, but having read both Kings and Chronicles and Samuel as well, you can tell that there's a different purpose in
You're right.
those two books, And so I think Kings is very detailed in about focusing on the several events that happen during that time, the historical events. But Chronicles is just, it's different. It's not as detailed, and that makes me believe it's written for a different purpose.
Theologically, it's kind of written more theologically. Maybe. I could be putting that. I don't want to put that in your mouth. But
No, I mean, I don't know if I would say theologically, but I kind of essentially the purposes are different. And so there could be, it may look like a discrepancy because they're going over the same, they're telling the same story. But if you're writing a book, you write a book for a purpose. And I think, the Bible has different books, but they're still interconnected, and they have, obviously some different authors. I'm not sure if Chronicles and Kings were different authors. But in summary, I just think the purposes are just different, and that's why the details are
But why
not
would there be
as
different purposes of the same
similar.
story in the Bible if it was supposed to be God's true word?
Well, I mean, I think each book of the Bible displays a different uh, a different understanding of who God is, so we can learn from that. I don't think necessarily because the details are not exactly the same that it's contradicting. I think that we can learn about who God is as we read different books of the Bible.
So do you think that like the first 5 books, because the tradition, the Christian tradition, and even the Jewish tradition in a lot of areas, is that Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible and like the laws of Moses. Do you feel like the first 5 books, the Torah, was written by Moses, that like Moses wrote the first 5 books, or is that just like a wives' tale type of thing?
No, I believe that. That's what you generally would hear from, Bible scholars and such. And yeah, I believe that.
So there's two things that are interesting. Well, actually, more than two. But like one thing that's interesting to me is like, actually, I'm going to give you the apologetic right out of the gate. So in Deuteronomy, Moses dies, and it talks about Moses's burial and death. And it says like, how he was buried, like mysteriously in a mountain, no one knows where he was buried, etc. So it's like, okay, if Moses wrote this, how did he write how he was buried?
Right, good
Now
point.
Rabbi Tovia, who I
Love Rabbi Tovia.
swear I should get like $1 every time I say Rabbi Tovia,
Yeah,
because
we
I
talk about
love the
him a lot.
guy.
Love that guy.
He's hardcore Jewish. He's a Jewish rabbi. I'm not Jewish. I don't believe in Judaism. But his apologetic for that is that Moses transferred the essentially word to Joshua. My name's Joshua, so I love that. But so
Mhm.
it's like, okay, cool, whatever. Like that's how the Moses death story happened or whatever. But here that there's a couple of interesting things that happens. Let's see if I can share my screen here real quick. So in which verse is this? This is in Genesis. So in Genesis, share this. God, you know what? I'm gonna stop doing this. I'm gonna just pull up the full chapter because out of context ticked me off when I was a Christian and I was in church and they were taking things out of context and cherry picking. I'm not going to do that anymore, even if I'm not a Christian. So in this in this passage of Genesis, let me scroll up. Sorry, y'all can see this as I go on the screen. I'm pulling up the. So this is Esau's descendants. They're talking about these are the descendants of Esau. So this is Genesis, right? So clearly Moses, right?
Yeah.
This is like Genesis 36. We're not even one book into the Moses narrative. We're talking about the descendants, and we're descending and we're descending. And this is where a lot of Christians fall off when they're reading Genesis. There's a lot of begats.
Oh, yeah, I
But,
Yeah.
struggled.
but when you get to Genesis 36:31, it says, these are the kings who reigned over the land of Edom before kings reigned over the Israelites. Now, there's a problem with this sentence that the writer of Genesis probably didn't realize. And the problem is, probably from your Old Testament knowledge, what came before the kings. There was a group of people that ruled over the Israelites before the kings, and they were like Samson was one, Deborah, they were the judges.
The judges, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we had Moses, and then we had, Aaron and Joshua. Joshua did a whole conquest. And then decades and decades after all the conquest, for centuries, there were judges. Before there were kings, the first king was Saul, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how did Moses know about Saul when it said, these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any kings were in past tense? So is Moses like writing in the future, like the Matrix, about something that happened in the past, knowing what was going to happen in the future?
The Moses Matrix. I love it. That's going to be a new hashtag. Moses Matrix.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's that. So we're saying that these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites. So is your point that Moses is saying that kings reigned? Moses is writing about kings who reigned in the land before kings were established.
Right, but how did he know kings were established like centuries after he died?
I mean,
because then the Israelites would be like, oh, sweet, in 400 years we're going to have kings. Then why are we having this whole discussion as to whether or not we're going to have kings? Moses knew like 400 years ago that we were going to have kings because he wrote about it.
Hmm. I mean, unless kings means a different thing, but probably not.
It doesn't. I mean, it
I
doesn't.
mean,
But do research on it.
yeah.
There. I don't want to bombard you. I'm going to show you one more thing about
No,
about the
no,
Moses
no.
thing,
This
and then
is
let's
this is
jump
really good.
forward. So that, by the way, because references everything. So that's 36:31, Genesis 36:31. Do checking on that. And let me pull up the other one that really I struggled with. And this was one where I was just like, what? Because here's the thing, it's subtle. It's not like so blatant that like a person's like here's the problem. You have to read the Bible to get this. So many Christians don't read the Bible. So I
Or
can
not like all of it.
right, or not all of it. So like I can tell already that you're reading the Bible, which thank goodness, because most people go to church, they ingest, and then they go out and then they do whatever they want to do. That to me was disgusting. I was like, if the God of the freaking universe wrote a book,
I need to know everything about it.
I want to know everything. The God of the universe wrote this, and everyone's eternal souls are in the balance. Like, why wouldn't I want to know every single pin stroke of this thing? What are your thoughts on that? Like, obviously, it sounds like you're a
I mean, he
Bible
seems
scholar.
like he takes, yeah.
Yeah, mean, I think that there are some things that I don't understand completely, and I would definitely concede that. Um, but when I see something like this that I don't have a great answer to, I question, does that make me question my faith? And
Yeah, yeah,
it really doesn't. It makes me want to understand more. And I can see why you can read that and be like, "What the heck, God? Like this doesn't make any sense." Um, but at the same time, I do feel like there's a lot I need to study and learn. But at the same time, like I feel like, and I don't want to be one of those Christians who says it's all about experience,
Sure.
and like that's not always a good answer. But at the same time, I do feel like there's an explanation. I do feel
yeah.
like there's a
And I think
reason
that that's a
why
really honest response
perhaps
on your
that
part.
Genesis thirty
You're
six
not
thirty one is there.
rejecting what we're showing you, and you're not
Yeah,
just blatantly saying no, it can't be something difficult. You're not saying that, and I really appreciate that, because whether
yeah,
or not we ever
yeah,
come to the same
Mhm.
viewpoint on these verses is not necessarily the point of this. The point of this is just to kind of like analyze a little bit with some honesty and just kind of ask the questions and see what that does,
yeah,
you know,
Well, in
internally.
solemn mind, I'll say
Sober mind,
sober mind. Sorry, I was saying solemn, sober.
yeah.
Solomon sober.
It's still too far away for us to read. Mind. So first of all, like you're being super honest, and I hope that you understand that we're being equally honest in that like we're
Yeah,
not here. Like I'm not like I in fact it's funny because when I first told my parents that guys, I don't believe I don't believe this anymore. My mom's mind instantly said, "Well, does that mean you're a Wicker?" And I know she meant Wiccan, but she asked if I was a Wicker, and I was like, "No, I'm not Satanist. I just don't necessarily believe this anymore." Now that's okay, right? And it doesn't mean that in like 10 years I'm not going to go back. If I see a reason that I should go back to believing in this, if I see a reason that I should go to Hinduism, if I see a reason whatever, I'm like open-minded, but I think this is a place where we're all open-minded. I think we lost him.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost our
Oh, we lost
interlocutor.
both people. We're not frozen, are we?
No.
Okay.
So there was someone
Hopefully,
in the
it
box
was,
that
I
was going to
believe,
join up.
Leonardo was the
Leonardo,
name in the
if you
box.
want to come up, come up.
Please come back. I saw you come in and out about twice.
Oh,
And also,
man.
if Sober wants to come back up and just have like a last, uh, kind of a wrap up, and
Yeah.
maybe we can encourage them to come back again.
We
I would love
we
that.
didn't even
It was a
get to the
great
New
conversation.
Testament.
I
There
know.
was some things in the New Testament.
Okay. Oh, this might
Yay,
be
he's
Sober.
back. They're back.
Sober-minded.
SoberMinded, are you
Yay.
back?
Yes, I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
That's
No, you're
okay. It
good. We're just happy
happens.
to have you back. Oh, we were just
Yeah,
saying, like, we're being equally honest with you. So it's like we're not here to try to like convert you to any sort of other religion or deconvert you from Christianity.
sure. Yeah,
We're trying to have the
yeah,
conversation. That's why we're called inquiry couple. We want to know,
yeah,
like, why do people still believe in what we used to believe when we feel like we've gotten out of it, and just have a discussion. So honestly, you're a
yeah,
fantastic example of an
So,
honest person.
and I haven't been extremely vocal tonight, and that's not necessarily a problem to me, but can I ask, Sober-minded,
yeah,
do you struggle with any of like the really difficult things like in the Old Testament? Like
yeah. I
some
mean,
some of what I would call like the really problematic verses and laws. Like, how do
mhm,
you feel about that? How do you
yeah,
handle it?
yeah. I've been doing a lot of reading, so I'm currently going through Paul Copan's book that is God a Vindictive Bully?
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and
Might have to
yeah,
look that
and
one up.
he's a historian, theologian, and he does a really deep dive on the really difficult Old Testament passages, like the laws, like you mentioned,
Yeah.
the all that stuff. So basically, what I'm learning is that, and hopefully you don't feel like this is just a cop out, but a
No, it's
lot
good.
of
Yeah.
a lot of what he is saying is that there's a lot of hyperbole in the Bible,
Hmm.
um, and like he gives an example of like when you're playing basketball and you're like, we demolished those guys, we slaughtered those
Hmm.
guys. It was a bloodbath. You're not really saying that you physically killed them. You're saying that you beat them pretty good. And then he also kind of describes how when he is talking about, for example, the Canaanites, Israel, the Canaanites at some point were in war. Um,
Oh,
no one left. There was no man or no woman or child left. But then they appear in later passages. So that's just telling me that again, it's hyperbole that they beat them really good, but they're still living. So meaning is that not literal every person was killed, but you know that they were.
So you're
you're
cutting
cutting out a
out a
little bit.
little bit. So
The
while you
laws also. No, keep going.
well, if you're able to get on some Wi-Fi, because getting that little
It's like a little froggy
like the
sound.
frog sound is like cutting out a little bit. If you're able to get some
Sorry about that.
Wi-Fi, I would pull up a verse, because my question to that would be
And I understand that approach to trying to like reconcile these passages, by the way, 100%.
Mhm.
right. So there's a couple of things. So the first thing would be when it gets super specific. So it's like okay, I'm not going to go into like the Herem, which is the ban, but I do encourage you to research the word Herem, Herem, and what Yahweh meant by the ban, and what that meant was essentially genocide. But there are very specific passages that I'm going to zoom in on, where it's like, yeah, if you're writing an apologetic like Lee Strobel or Dr. James Dobson or any of these folks that I used to like worship when I was growing up, and they used to have these apologetics, they could gloss over things, but it said, like, when Moses became angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, who had come from the service in the war. So this is very specific. I mean, this isn't like, hey, I'm just speaking holistically. We just had a war, and this is a very specific war too. Like you can go into, of course, I encourage everyone. This is Numbers 31. Go into exactly what war this was with which people. But Moses is specifically getting into the fact that Moses said to them, have you allowed the women to live? Because God commanded everyone to die. Everyone to die except for a very select group of people in this particular war that were supposed to be able to be left alive. And Moses said to them, these women here, on Balaam's advice, made the Israelites act treacherously against the Lord in the affair of Peor, so that the plague came among the congregation of the Lord. Now, therefore, kill every male among the little ones. So, in other words, obviously, we're going to kill the old males and the fighting males. That goes without saying. We're
Right, because we're trying to take the people out.
Right,
But
this is
also
war. Right.
the little boys.
But it says, and kill every woman who has known a man by sleeping with him. So, in other words, every non virgin, kill them. So, genocide the men, genocide the boys, genocide the women who have had sex, but all the young girls who have not known a man by sleeping with him, keep them alive for yourselves. So, how does the book that you're reading justify this sort of behavior by a God that is supposed to be, according to the Trinity, Jesus?
Yeah.
And maybe you're not a Trinitarian too.
Right. Maybe you think in the demiurge like Marcion, which I would totally get behind.
No, I'm pretty basic in my Christian beliefs, believing in the Trinity and all that. I do think that God's judgments are not always compatible with our brains. And I do think that God has a reason for why he does certain things. Now, will I call it genocide? I just don't see God as a genocidal God. I see God as one who is for the nations, loves all people. But there are judgments that he provides that often make us feel uncomfortable. And I think number one, we have to realize that God is God, we are man. We don't judge like God. We can sometimes try and put ourselves in the place of God and feel like, if I was God, I wouldn't do that. But God's all knowing, God's all powerful. And he has reasons for why he does certain things that perhaps is beyond our human comprehension. And I know that may not
But
satisfy
can I challenge that
everybody's.
just a little bit? And I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Sure.
you just said he's all knowing and
Yeah.
all powerful. Why could he not present things to us in a way that like we could comprehend? Like why
I
could
believe
he
he
not
does.
just
I
say
believe.
this action that I'm taking is going to make sense because it is meaningful for some reason. It's going to make sense to you because it's not too hard. Like he said, the laws of Moses are not too hard for you to follow. So why suddenly is he taking action that for some reason maybe we can't understand because it sounds yucky?
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And I'm not saying that to be confrontational
yeah.
necessarily.
No.
I think that like there should be a reason that if he's supposed to be our accessible God, we should be able to make sense of why in this situation he's saying kill everyone except the virgin girls. In my mind, that's kind of gross. I don't want to have to like rationalize a statement like that by saying, well, I just don't understand because I'm not God.
Yeah. I'm currently kind of skimming through Enduring Word. It's a pretty good commentary. I think Blue Letter Bible is also a good resource that, I'll look into. I feel like there's
Are they rationalizations? What's the difference? What's the difference between a commentary and a rationalization?
I think a commentary provides good that word again, context. I believe there's also a lot of understanding of what's going on in that time. If I were to go back into that time and what's going on and what I'm seeing, yes, we're in 2026. It sounds terrible, but what was it really like back then? I don't really know. I go to commentary to
But
to
wouldn't
find that
God
out.
know better than the people back then? Wouldn't
Yeah,
God
of
know just
course,
as
yeah.
much back then as he knows right now? Like, if this is bad now, wouldn't he have known it was bad for always?
Yeah, but when I read the Bible, I don't always read it in isolation. And so I do think I have to take into consideration the other parts that I've seen of God. And I'm learning that there's just as much grace in the Old Testament and truth, that harsh truth and judgment in the Old Testament, as there is grace and truth and harsh judgment in the New Testament. And so when I'm reading something like this that's kind of off-putting, like what the heck, God, I also have to give God credit and say, well, I've seen you show grace in other passages in the Old Testament. So it can't just be that you're just a vindictive bully that's genocidal and mean and ugly and wants to hurt people and this is a cult and all this stuff. I get it sounds like that, but when I take the totality of what I'm seeing of God's character, I just can't come to the conclusion that him, wanting to save only the virgin girls is just him being mean and difficult,
But what do
you
you
know?
think happens to those girls that get saved? Only the virgin girls. Like, what do you think happens to them after the warriors save them?
So this is can you repeat it's
The verse?
number 31? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let me see. The
Yeah,
screen
it
is so small.
is Numbers. Yes, you're correct. 31,
31, 14
14
through
through
18.
18, if you want to get like the whole context. I mean, obviously read the whole chapter. But yeah.
But all the young girls who have not known a man by sleeping with him,
I mean,
keep them alive for yourselves. Like, what do you think that means? These are grown adult warrior men who are keeping only the virgin girls alive for themselves. Like, if we're being completely honest with this text, what do we think is happening to those poor girls? It doesn't sound good.
Yeah. No, it doesn't.
so what I'd like
I
to do is
agree.
actually pause here because I don't want to put you on the
Yeah, and
spot.
I'm not
Sure.
saying to, yeah.
So sober mind. I don't want to put you on the spot. I hope that you wrote down the other verses. I hope that you look at the combination of Samuel Kings versus Chronicles, because you know what? Maybe Chronicles should be non-canon. Maybe Samuel King should be non-canon. They don't agree. Now, I can show you a lot of other disagreements in the New Testament.
I
Maybe
don't
some of
think
those
so.
New Testament books
Yeah.
should be non-canon. Or
Mm.
maybe Yahweh's a monster, maybe he's not, but maybe start looking at these things and thinking, like, to your point, don't so I'm gonna be a bit of an asshole.
I don't know what he's about to say.
I know.
I'm trying to decide if
I'm
I
gonna
should
be an
punch him
asshole.
or let him talk.
Here's what I'm gonna say. The first thing you're gonna do, because you were me 10 years ago, you're gonna say, I'm gonna look and see what the apologists say, and I'm gonna find a way to defend my faith. And then you're gonna find the ways to wiggle around it like a gymnast and a pretzel. And what happens is you can do that for a long time.
Sure.
Just stop. Don't keep reading, don't keep challenging, and don't keep studying. Because if you do, eventually you realize that you don't need a pretzel. You can just look back at what's real. But that's my meta. That's my meta.
Well, yeah, I don't want to get too meta because I really like this caller,
yes, and I really
I'd like
would
to
like
dive back in and just talk about.
Mhm.
I mean, I'd love to talk about more of these complicated passages. I'd love to talk about what the New Testament looks like in comparison. I'd love to have lots of conversations. We do have another friend in the box. I'll be right back.
We do have a little bit of a connection issue though, sober mind.
Yeah, it's a little froggy.
So we are gonna move to H. But by the way, sober mind, you've been fantastic. What does that always happen? The second I reference the next person in the box, they drop. And H has talked to us times before. He's fantastic. They'll come back. But Sober Mind, I do want to give you the last word because I think it's important to give our guests the last word in your thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my connection has been quite
No,
crappy.
no.
But
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. You said I am you 10 years ago. I think that yes, I listen to a lot of apologists and all that, but my desire is not to just listen to people that agree with me. I want to listen to things that are actually true. Listen to some good pushback to what I do believe. And so my goal is to really get into numbers and those passages that you showed, and to really be as objective as possible. And I
Mad
think
respect.
that's
Mad respect.
that yeah, that should be the goal, I think, for everybody who's seeking truth or who's
Agreed.
inquiring.
Seeking
But
the truth.
yeah,
Yes.
that's really my goal. Seeking the truth is important. I think I could come to the Bible with my biases. You guys can come to the Bible with your biases, and you can read things out of it that are not intended. But I think to be a good, you have to be objective as possible and kind of take away those lessons that we all have. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I hope you guys would do the same. And yeah, it was great talking to you guys.
We would love
and
it if you
hopefully,
would
I'll
subscribe
be
and
back
come
on
back up
again.
next time we're live. We'd love to chat some more.
Would love to chat
Yeah,
some more.
absolutely.
You're very
Would
intelligent.
love that
You
as
are
well.
a very intelligent individual, and your insights were fantastic.
I just feel like you're honest and genuine, and I appreciate you being kind.
Yeah, honest is the best. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. You all have a good night.